You're watching Starting Point. Our team this morning, Will Cain is back, CNN contributor, columnist for theblaze.com. Kay Coppins is with us, political editor at BuzzFeed.com. Richard Socarides back, writer for NewYorker.com, former senior advisor to President Bill Clinton. Nice to have you all with me this morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Let's talk about this dinner. This had potential to be a hot disaster. They dined on the president's dime, of course, a dozen Republican senators who were invited to dinner at a fancy Washington, D.C. restaurant. The menu included some serious talk about spending and taxes, and the White House is hoping that it could lead to better bipartisan cooperation. Let's get right to CNN's Dan Lothian. He's at the White House for us this morning. You know, I think this is the kind of thing that has the potential to be a train wreck, but most accounts seem to say that it was productive.
That's right. I think there was a real positive tone coming out of that dinner. The president, according to White House officials, enjoyed the dinner, said that there was a good exchange of ideas. They touched on a number of issues from the debt and deficit to entitlement and tax reform. So again, an optimistic tone. And according to some of those senators talking to CNN, they said that the conversation was very real and that while everyone was respectful, nobody was holding back punches.
It was a dinner date with Republicans, and President Obama picked up the tab. Blocks from the White House at the swanky Jefferson Hotel, food and fiscal challenges, and an effort to find compromise less than a week after across-the-board cuts kicked in.
How's the meeting go?
Just fine.
12 Republican senators invited by the president broke bread for more than 2 hours.
What was the tone in the room like?
Very positive, encouraging, candid, focused on how do we come together. Compromise is necessary and it's possible. The issue is how do we get there.
President Obama has stepped up his outreach to Republicans in recent days. A series of phone calls, this dinner, and planned trips to Capitol Hill next week. Engaging in a way his critics say he failed to do in his first term.
Ultimately, the way we're going to get stuff done, personal relationships are important. And obviously, I can always do a better job.
The dinner didn't result in any major agreements, but it was viewed as a positive step in the right direction.
That's why these kinds of dialogues are so important, and there needs to be more of them.
Now, CNN has confirmed that President Obama has invited Representative Paul Ryan, of course, the chairman of the House Budget Committee, here to the White House for lunch today, along with a top Democrat. This is yet another sign of a significant shift by this White House in strategy as the president reaches out to Republicans in a bigger way. Soledad?
Dan Lothian joining us this morning. Thank you, Dan, for the update. Let's get right to Republican Senator from Indiana, Dan Coats. He was at that dinner last night. Nice to have you with us, sir. So how did that dinner go?
Well, it was a cordial dinner, but it was a serious dinner. And we talked about the subjects we should talk about, the debt and deficit, and plunged into more and more debt through out-of-control government spending. And I was glad the president took the opportunity to talk to us personally. I've been talking to him a lot from the Senate floor. I'm not sure he's listening on CNN or C-SPAN. It was nice to be across the table from him and be able to express exactly my deep concerns about how we fix this fiscal mess.
So then, if you're talking debt and deficit, fiscal mess, that sounds like it could be a very uncomfortable kind of dinner. How would you describe sort of the back and forth with the president? Was he accepting of some of the proposals, or was it that specific? I mean, did it get contentious?
It did not get contentious, but it was serious, and we had, I think, a very adult discussion. Instead of being on the campaign trail and the president trying to make his point, we were working together and talking together about the real essence of our problem and how we can get this thing turned from this never-ending short-term fix, fiscal cliff stuff into a long-term solution to our fiscal problem. And I was pleased that it was that substantive.
So, Senator, hold on one second. I want to turn to my panel for a moment. I'm trying to decide if I like the idea of this negotiation in progress. As the senator described it, right? He's like, listen, I've been talking to him from the Senate floor, meaning the president, and that doesn't seem to be particularly effective. So is it better, in fact, that you have these sort of small dinners or you know, should Congress actually work in Congress where they belong?
I mean, I think that this is exactly the way Washington should work. You know, this is the way it used to work in the old days. And I mean, you know, the president, the old days, like even 20 years ago when I was, no. I mean, even when President Clinton would do this, I mean, President Clinton would have members of the opposition party over for dinner. You know, President Obama has admitted that this is something he's, you know, actually not that good at. But I mean, it's like this person-to-person thing. The president is still the most important person in the world, the leader of the free world. When you invite members of Congress over there, they're charmed.
The question to how useful this is depends on how much back and forth there was. The accusation from Republicans has been that when the president addresses the House caucus or whatever situation with Republicans, it comes across as lecturing, informing them of his ideas. So how much listening was done and how much back and forth.
So do you think that's a fair criticism? I mean, would you say that the president did a lot of listening? Because it's true, I think a criticism of him is that he does a lot of the talking part and not much of the listening part.
This was just the opposite of what we've seen. Us on our platform trying to get a message to him, and him on his platform, a lot of times campaigning outside of Washington. This was very substantive. He did listen. It was a very serious discussion. And I hope that it leads to action. You know, talk is one thing.
Please tell me about it. I know. That's all we do. We talk about the talk. So, Senator, you don't even need to finish that sentence, sir. I know where you're going. Next up is lunch. Paul Ryan and Chris Van Hollen will be coming together. And I was trying to read into it, like, lunch, does that mean that's more important or less important?
Well, obviously less.
That's usually dating. You do the lunch date when you're not so serious.
Yes, I was going to say, I used to pick lunch when I really didn't want to spend a lot of time with people. So, Senator, in all seriousness, what do you think happens in those conversations when you have Chris Van Hollen and Paul Ryan sort of at the table face to face? Where do you see that going?
Well, those are two key figures that are going to have to bring back to their caucuses the details of where we need to go. But I think the president's reaching out now. Maybe it's a consequence of the sequester, all the overhype about this is going to be doomsday for America has not worked. And I think getting back now to the individual, let's talk about this, let's get serious, and let's do it in a way that we can, obviously we have to come together in the end to produce something, as the president said. But his reaching out, I think we ought to accept it for what it was. And we ought to be thankful that we've had this opportunity and that the president is doing this. And as I said, it's got to lead to action. It can't just be talk, because the situation we're dealing with is very serious.
Well, I'm not a politician, but I'm a voter. So, God, yes, please, let's get it all together. Thank you, Senator Coates. Always nice to have you with us. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you.
How many times have you said, yeah, let's do lunch? Dinner? I don't think so.
I'm trying to figure out if we've ever had lunch now, because I'm a little bit nervous about your whole,
Trust me, if we're having lunch, it's because I don't want to have dinner with you. All right, wait. Let me get right to an update on the top stories we've got to get to. What do you got, John?
A little uncomfortable, frankly.